This is apparently the Grishno early morning edition. There was a couple things recently that happened that made me think about institutional transphobia, or another way that I've been thinking about calling it is Cis-Normality. And so basically, like, I went to a conference recently and we were talking a lot about health disparities and institutional racism built into the system that keeps minorities down. And if you look at things like the way that banks would give loans 50 years ago, that sort of thing still has an impact on the way cities are built today and where food is available and all these things that contribute to these huge health disparities between different populations. Now, trans people are no different. Trans people have some of the highest rates of HIV infections in the entire world, the highest prevalency rates. It's in some populations, like African American trans women, it's higher than 50%. It is insane how high these health disparities are, and especially when you consider that the national average for HIV is less than 1%, right? And why is that? Why is that? And you think back, I mean, we all know the answer to these questions. We experience the answers to these questions constantly. But how do you find a solution without really exploring the problem? So the best thing that I've been able to come up with is Cis-Normality, which basically describes a system, and let's use the identification system in this country, right? Driver's licenses, birth certificates, social security card, all these things that you have to use as a member of the society in order to be able to prove who you are. If I want to be able to prove that I have been licensed to drive a vehicle, I need to have a driver's license and it needs to have my picture. And in order to prove that that's actually me, I need to show my birth certificate, and I also need to show other forms of identification like my social security card, things like that. And I think I talked about this about 3 years ago when I moved here to California, but I needed to get a new driver's license, right? And at that point, I've been living as a woman for like 4 or 5 years at that point. I'd had a female driver's license in New York for the longest time, hadn't even thought about driver's license issues. And then I moved to California, and because my birth certificate from Utah still says male, I needed to get an additional doctor's note, which meant I needed to find a doctor, which meant I needed to go through all these different things just to find a doctor, to get a note, to prove that I'm actually a woman, to then get a driver's license that actually says female, that I can use to get a job, that I can use to drive a vehicle, that I can use for all these things, right? But there's that additional barrier for trans people, right? And when you look at it, it's a lot of compound barriers made up in the system. So just the fact that I need to get a note in order to change something on this document, I need to get it from a doctor, right? That's an extra bar that I have to jump through that other people don't have to jump through. Well, here's the thing, right? So that's great if you can change your birth certificate, but we in this country have decided that leaving our birth certificates up to the states is apparently a great idea. Well, it's not a great idea. It's a terrible idea, because what happens is every state has different laws around birth certificates, and you see that with like the birther movement against Obama, or you see that in Utah, where I was born, where I can't actually get my birth certificate changed. I get an amendment to it. Now I have a 2-page birth certificate, basically, and it still says my birth name on there. So no matter what, when I have to use that, I'm screwed. And I can go back, so I'm post-op, right? And I can go back and I can get a court order now from someone here in Oakland. So now I need to find a judge. I need to be able to do a court order, which apparently costs like $400. I need to do all that in order to get my birth certificate changed. The note from the doctor who did my surgery is apparently not enough for them. They would need a court order. So that's another bar to get that. And then when I get the court order, all they're going to do is add another page. That's it. It's just going to be another amendment. It's still always going to have on there my birth name and my birth sex. And so it's not a document that I want to have to use, and yet I have to use it in order to navigate society, right? That is an example of what cis-normality is, or a disparity, I guess, within the trans community, or it contributes to disparities within the trans community. When you consider health, when you consider access to jobs, or access to doctors, or all these different things, it can all depend on these systems, right? And built into these systems is transphobia. And it's what keeps the community down. It's the thing that really has to be fought against, in my opinion. What got me thinking about this is I just applied for a passport. And if you're smart, you can always navigate a system, but you got to be smart. You got to be able to put in the time. You got to have all those privileges, right? I had to send off my original birth certificate, which meant I needed to pull out my name change documents. I needed to pull out my letter from my surgeon, send all of those off with my passport application, which is a lot more than other people have to do for their passport, just to get the female on there, right? But when I get my passport, it will not have my birth name or my birth sex or anything, and I can use it in place of my birth certificate. So when I get a job, things like that, I don't need to use my birth certificate anymore. So that's going to go into a dusty bin somewhere that I pull out when I'm 60 and say, oh yeah, that's right, I remember this. Because if I have to keep using it, it's been 8 years that I've been living full-time as a woman. 8 years, and I am still dealing with this kind of thing. Like, I still have my birth certificate haunting me, and it's something that would keep a lot of people down. So anyway, yay for passports, boo for cis-normality. I wanted to hear your thoughts on some of this institutional transphobia or cis-normality, or what are your thoughts around it? What are your experiences with it? What's it like in different countries? I'm really kind of curious about fleshing this idea out a little bit more. Anyway, thanks for having my coffee with me. I gotta go to work. No, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. All right. Have a wonderful day. Bye, guys.